Upcoming issue of Time magazine, 2020, the worst year ever.
Now to growing concerns about the deadly coronavirus officially hitting the U.S.
It's going to disappear. One day it's like a miracle. It will disappear.
COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
Public health emergency.
A declaration of emergency.
State of emergency.
No one's recommending that people buy respirators, which are those blue masks that you see. Certainly hazmat suits. That is certainly overboard.
The CDC recommending Americans wear masks in public.
Nancy Pelosi tonight announcing a mask mandate.
The United States could become the world epicenter of the outbreak.
America has become the epicenter of the pandemic. More than 136,000 people are infected and more than 2,400 have died from the virus.
U.S. coronavirus cases hit 250,000.
Millions of people face infection and 200,000 could die.
The death toll in the U.S. tops 200,000, the highest in the world. And as we come on the air, the rate of new infections nationwide continues to grow.
For the past week, the daily death count here in the U.S. rose to its highest level of any point in this pandemic.
Stay at home.
Stay home, stay safe.
Quite simply, stay at home.
So could you just go ahead and run us through what your typical day would look like for online classes?
Bare minimum is just to spell out your topic, your question, and your method.
Well, it's for that, but also for the final.
Online, it's a bit different. It feels a lot less personal. A lot of students keep their cameras turned off, so you just see people's names and hear random voices coming from blank screens. My level of participation has definitely declined, and I noticed that a lot of my other classmates probably are feeling the same way. I would say it's definitely gotten harder to communicate with people and pick up on social cues. I don't really communicate with a lot of my friends that aren't here with me in Athens, just because we can only really communicate through FaceTime and text, and aren't like in my close vicinity I'm not communicating with.
How are your grades in comparison to years prior?
I would say that my grades have been negatively impacted after going to online courses. I feel a lot less connected to my schoolwork. Getting into the swing of things was a lot harder than going to in-person classes. I don't meet up for group projects, not really going out and like meeting other people in my classes, so it's definitely taken a big strain on the social aspect. In a lot of my classes, we aren't making group chats. We aren't really talking to each other like classes normally do. It's very on your own. I was actually supposed to be in LA for this semester on an internship, but unfortunately it got canceled, which has a great impact on my career because as a media person, I need a lot of experience to be able to get hired for these jobs. And without the necessary experience of an internship, I might not even be considered.
Like, are you glad that you're finishing school in this period?
No. This year kind of feels like a waste monetarily and education-wise. I'm not getting the same. My mood has been severely impacted following online classes. I've just felt a lot more isolated and alone.
Has the internet taken over your life?
So it is really hard to communicate with my students sometimes, especially just not being there in person. We have noticed that they are lacking that interaction that you need, even if it is just like a second at lunch or a second in the hallways. Some of these students haven't even been able to see friends. A lot of them don't feel that community aspect with their classes, so a lot of them are struggling with feeling comfortable to make mistakes or feeling comfortable to unmute themselves. Other students that need that extra push and that need that social interaction, it's definitely hard for them, and it's hard to see the social aspect of this. They're missing that social interaction. They're missing those key times that make you into who you're gonna be when you grow up. None of my students really keep their cameras on. We try to encourage it, but you don't know if all of the students are really comfortable with their settings and their backgrounds. If I can't see their faces, one of the biggest issues is I can't really tell from those facial cues if they understand something or if they're struggling with something. It's really upsetting because we know most of those students were students that were kind of struggling already with in-person classes. One interesting thing I didn't really think about, but we just started a group project, and you have the option to either work alone, work with a partner, or work in a group with 3. And mostly every student has chosen to work individually, which is something that usually if you're in a group project option, you're gonna choose the group instead of the individual. So that's definitely something. I think they find it easier to just do stuff alone instead of communicating because they're kind of more used to it. So I'm really worried that they won't exactly feel comfortable going out of their shell when they reach college. I'm worried that they're gonna feel still in that aspect of, oh, like I'm fine being on my own, I'm fine staying in my room. I'm 100% worried about it, and I think younger kids even are struggling with it even more so, and they're developing more, so it's definitely hard.
The best part about online learning is would be how I can't think of anything.
Patches is barking right now.
Can you repeat the question?
Different. I think we. Sorry, Sam. I'm on it.
What was the question?
Okay, sorry.
What does your typical day look like?
The worst thing about being Robert! Whatever.
So do you still feel like you participate as much as an online setting?
I definitely do not participate as much as I normally would in person. Well, I know for me, like, my motivation is like not there. Because like I'm not in person to like interact with people, so I feel less obligated to answer questions. I kind of just rely on other peers to do that.
I definitely do not participate as much because I just never want to. That's not a good enough answer.
Some clubs I'm in, we are barely able to do anything or have any fundraising because of the online and just because of COVID in general.
And I'm also a freshman, so all the clubs that I have been wanting to join aren't really happening.
I guess during the bulk of quarantine, right, when we're all like locked in and everyone was freaking out, how much did you communicate with your friends during that, and how much do you communicate with them now?
I communicated with my friends a lot during quarantine. I would say that was all how we kind of got through it, is by talking to each other and calling each other. And I'm obviously really lucky because one of my best friends is my next door neighbor, and my other best friends live right down the street from me. So I had it pretty good during quarantine because I could still see them from a distance.
Communicating with my friends during quarantine was not as bad as I thought it would be because they live on the same street as me, so we would go and take walks and everything. So I wouldn't say it has changed that much, but the people I do talk to, like just in school, I really don't get to talk to them anymore.
And I think we definitely all appreciated our friendships a lot more and said, like, you know, I love you, like, every time we like left each other, because you saw how unpredictable things were and how things can be taken so easily. So I think we definitely cherished each other a lot more after. My mental health before the pandemic was already pretty bad, so whenever it did hit, it did not help it at all, and especially not being able to see anybody. So it was definitely a struggle trying to balance that in school and seeing some people but not being able to see others and family members. Just the struggles we've all had to go through. No, you don't want to see anybody have to go through that, your family members, your friends, and just people in general. So that's been difficult to see, but yeah.
The president and other top officials making the case that school reopening should be a priority, both for the mental health and the academic well-being of students, as well as for the economic health of the country.
We want to reopen the schools. Everybody wants it. The moms want it. The dads want it. We're very much going to put pressure on governors and everybody else to open the schools.
CDC encourages all schools to do what they need to reopen.
It was a bit different at first compared to being in person with them starting the school year day one, because it's hard to teach even the little kids and the older kids how to read through a computer. So there is definitely a big disconnect, and our kids lost a lot of learning throughout this pandemic and being virtual.
When you did teach virtually, did your students, were they required to have their cameras on, or did they turn them off? Do you feel like they participated as much as they did in a classroom setting?
I required them to keep their camera on so that they could see me and I could see them. As far as participation, that kind of was horrible, so to say, because they didn't participate when I was teaching, like reading or math or whatever it was. And then as far as them even joining Zoom was difficult. Like some days I might only had, out of 15 total kids, I might only had like 4.
So do you feel like it's a distraction, like with kids seeing what's going on other people's cameras and everything?
So it was a distraction to try to get them involved in the class and participate and everything else.
Okay. And did you see generally just a increase or decrease in grades?
Big decrease.
And are most kids within your district, from what you can tell, eager to get back to in-person?
Yeah. Like my kids were so excited to come back Monday morning, came running down the hall.
Do you feel safe as a teacher teaching in this time?
Part yes and part no. Like since I do teach the little kids and it's a struggle for them to keep their mask or their shield on, I don't feel safe. And I do try to keep my distance, but it's hard with the little ones, and like they still need help. Like some of them need help like buttoning coats and tying shoes and things like that.
So was there a big push in your district to be in person?
We really didn't get an option. Our superintendent didn't really consider the teachers' opinions or even the community's opinions. It was more just, this is what we're doing and you better go along with it. Yeah, there are still a lot of parents in our district that opted for cyber. I feel personally that there will be a disconnect. A lot of our kids lose that personalization between even myself and the students and interactions between each other. Hopefully it stays good and positive throughout the rest of the year, but who knows, we could be shut down again.
There's like typical first year teaching overwhelmed, I feel like, and then there's doing your first year of teaching in the middle of COVID.
Do you feel safe, like, as a teacher right now?
Not overly. It is a scary situation to be in. You don't know what families or the students themselves are doing outside of school. You can only limit exposure for the 7 hours a day that you're seeing them. We are doing our best to keep the kids safe that are there, but we're also trying to fulfill needs that only the school district can fulfill. So to do the best we can to continue to provide what the students need, the best that we can, is a step that we have to take until we cannot take it anymore. A social life is just as much a need as anything else for them right now. Some parents are more strict than others and won't let them go see their friends because with all of this. So school may be the only place that they are getting to talk to their friends in anything that isn't just a text or a phone call. I think they are still adjusting on what that feels like again, especially for students crossing from 8th grade to high school. They're kind of adjusting on the fly. All of the last month or so of classes where you would typically try to prep them for the next step happened online. The younger teachers are more equipped to use the technology that we are kind of being forced into using right now, where the teachers that have been at this for 20 years are kind of slower to pick it up just because they haven't been raised with technology. Like, this stuff didn't even exist until within the past 5 years. So veteran teachers are trying their best to keep up. Even parents don't know how to use the things that we're asking their kids to. I have kids that are doing really well, and I know it's because their parents are very involved. But I also know that I have high schoolers that are going home and cooking for their younger sister and making sure that they get their work done, and so they don't have time for their own. The ones that will show up are the ones that probably have a better home life because they can and they don't have to worry about the other stuff.
So do you feel like your communication with the students and more specifically the parents has changed?
Oh, absolutely. I am far from being as connected to my students as I want to be. And that disconnect, I think, is what wears at me more than anything else. It's been really tricky and kind of disheartening. We have less of a chance to get face-to-face with the students themselves, and almost even less of an opportunity to get face-to-face with parents. Parent contact is more urgent now than ever, but also a little more scarce to make happen now than ever. This is the time where parent involvement needs to be at an all-time high, and it seems to be at an all-time low.
Let's say in-person classes are starting back next semester. Are you going to opt out?
If everything's under control by then, I'd be perfectly happy going to in-person classes again, but with the way that things are right now, I would not feel comfortable going back to in-person classes. I definitely think that in-person classes will not be a thing next semester.
What would you say is your average screen time throughout the day?
The entire day. On my cell phone or? Ooh, average screen time for a day, probably a scary amount.
How's your guys' screen time? How much time do you spend?
My screen time has gone up an insane amount.
I definitely go on my phone a lot.
How often do you guys go outside right now?
I definitely do not go outside a lot anymore. In the beginning, I literally just told you to.
Oh.
My grades this year, I would say, are better. Okay, hold on. I was gonna say because I cheat, but I can't really say that.
I was gonna say that too, but like everything.
I mean, you're not wrong.